Hello and welcome back to Ghost Creatures and Scares Oh My. This is the seventh episode.
A podcast where we share our love of the show Supernatural and dive into the fascinating and terrifying real life legends behind the ghosts and creatures featured in each episode of Supernatural.
This episode is called Hookman and Urban Legends, and we explore the disturbing history of these stories.
So each week we'll briefly go through the episode of Supernatural, which is going to be episode 7 today, and we just unpick the actual creature that's featured in that show, the entity. So we're really excited to be back this week. We didn't do an episode last week because we were at the funeral of a close family member, so we didn't think it was right to put an episode out on that day. But we're back this week, and we were looking forward to this one. So it's lovely to be able to record it and hopefully hear what you guys think as well. So this week we're looking at episode 7 of Supernatural, Hookman.
The synopsis for this episode begins with a young couple at a secluded area in a car. When something rocks the car, the boy goes out to investigate. After a while, when it has gone silent, the girl gets out of the car and finds her boyfriend's body hanging upside down from the bridge, blood pooling under him. Sam and Dean investigate and find out about a local legend about a preacher in the 1800s with a hooked hand who murdered people on the same road where the couple were. Later, the same girl awakens to find her roommate dead in bed in a pool of blood. There is a message on the wall in blood that says, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the lights?" Underneath is a symbol made up of crosses. Sam and Dean think that the girl's dad, a local reverend, is summoning the Hook Man. It turns out that the girl has unwittingly been wearing the melted hook of the original Hook Man killer in the form of a silver cross necklace given to her as a church heirloom. Her thoughts are linked to the manifestation of the spirit, and they destroy the necklace, ending the killing.
So when we thought of this episode, we thought, should we just focus on Hookman? And then we said, oh, it's an ideal kind of avenue in, isn't it, to do all different urban legends? So this episode, if you're not really into the history side of things, it's more kind of there's less history and more just like modern urban legends and some older ones. But it is quite a recent thing, isn't it, the urban legend?
Yeah, we do love a good urban legend, don't we?
And I think that episode is quite terrifying because it does have the obviously there's the Hook Man, but like you say that there's other urban legends come into play. The one with the "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light?" That's quite a famous one.
Hmm.
It reminds me of the film Urban Legend. Maybe 1998 or something like that. That was released. I'm not
Which
sure.
one?
Urban Legend.
Oh, the urban legend actual
The
film.
film,
All right, yeah,
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 is
yeah.
it? I mean, it gets a lot of stick that film,
I'm a big
being like
fan.
a,
It's
but
brilliant.
I think it's a great, yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's a
there's a
really
couple of
good,
them as well.
yeah. I mean, to be honest, the first one's the only one that's really good. Well, I use the word good loosely, but it entertained me. So we're going to have a really tiny little bit of history on urban legends, and then we're going to dive into some really famous ones and just discuss our thoughts. So, before we do, what's your favourite urban legend?
Hmm. Probably have to be maybe Hookman.
Really?
Bloody Mary's a pretty good one.
Yeah, actually, Bloody Mary. We can't cover obviously Bloody Mary because we did that a couple of episodes ago. Yeah, that is a good one. Mine's the backseat of the car, which we're going to cover.
Hmm.
I love that one. Okay, so an urban legend is a genre of folklore made up of stories or false claims circulated as truth, especially as having happened to a friend of a friend or a family member, often with horrifying, humorous, or cautionary elements. These legends can be entertaining, but often they have a concern or mysterious peril or troubling events, such as disappearances and strange objects or entities. Urban legends in the past were most often circulated orally, but now they can be spread by any media. So that's quite important. So in the past, it would just be, the Bloody Mary one. Oh, this happened to a friend of a friend. But now you've got chainmail and, like creepypastas and all sorts on the internet.
That sort of mail words. If you don't do this, this will happen to
Then
you.
this will happen. Yeah, when I was younger, that used to terrify me. Like the one where it was if you don't send this to seven, it's always seven friends, then this thing will appear at the end of your bed at midnight or something
I
like
think like
that.
even now, if I get an email like that, as soon as I've read the first line, if you don't, then
If
I
you don't, yeah,
quickly
because
click it off.
if you don't read it and you haven't like
Exactly.
bought into it, maybe. This can include newspapers, mobile news apps, email, and most often social media. Some urban legends have passed through the years, decades, with only minor changes, such as updates on trends or technology. So, for example, the same story gets regurgitated, but it's given it's in the same situation. So, if it was a newspaper, now it might be Facebook or that. Oh, that's showing my age, isn't it?
Uh,
TikTok.
I've got no idea.
Snappy chat. I don't know. um,
Snappy chat.
I don't know, I haven't got that. Yeah, so generic urban legends are often altered to suit the place it's been told in or the time, but the lesson or the moral remains majorly the same. Some people link modern urban legends to fairy tales of the past, such as Grimm's tales, where the element of the tale usually has a warning or a cautionary element to it. And it's told in the form of entertaining, unbelievable, and shocking stories. So before we dive into some famous urban legends, I think it is quite an interesting one. What do you think of the urban legends?
I'm a big fan of the
Yeah,
legends,
they
yeah.
are. Can you remember when we were younger? This is very regional, but there was an urban legend that went round because we've got quite a big shopping centre near us called the Metro Centre, and there was an urban legend that went round. You're looking like you haven't heard of this one.
Waiting to see what you say.
Oh, no, it was always like, by the way, don't go to the Metro Centre on, I don't know, the 12th of this date or something like that because a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend's cat told my auntie's goldfish that there's going to be a bomb there. Can you remember that one?
All right, I don't think that was an urban legend. I think that was probably just scaremongering.
No, that is a form of an urban legend because it changed to suit the time. So when mum and dad were kids, it was the IRA was a big threat, and then when we were older, it was maybe the threat of suicide bombers and things, which suits the time of the place. So it's
Hmm.
just it is to scare you.
The one
Um,
that springs to my mind is the White Van Man.
oh well, of course, when we were kids. I mean, I don't want to get too heavy on these kind of things, but we did have there was quite a lot of famous really awful kidnappings and things like that and child murders and it was if you see a man on his own in a white van he will kidnap you. It was just so everyone was scared of white with the white
The
vans.
White Van Man.
Yeah, just stuff like that. So today we're going to hear some popular urban legends and discuss the believability of each one. Some are more outlandish than others, so it makes sense to start with Hookman.
Hmm.
The Hook or the Hookman is an urban legend about a killer with a pirate-like hook for a hand, attacking couples in a parked car. In many versions of the story, the killer is typically portrayed as a faceless, silhouetted old man wearing a raincoat and a rain hat that conceals most of his features, especially his face. The story is thought to date from at least the mid 1950s and gained significant attention when it was reprinted in the advice column Dear Abby in 1960. It has since become a morality archetype in popular culture and has been referenced in various horror films. So I'm thinking of straight away, I Know What You Did Last Summer
Yeah, I was
springs to
thinking of that
mind.
one. Yeah.
Um, the basic premise involves a young couple cuddling in a car with the radio playing. Suddenly, a news bulletin reports that a serial killer with a hook has just escaped from a nearby institution. For varying reasons, they decide to leave quickly. In the end, once they get back to the woman's house, the killer's hook is either found hanging from the door handle or embedded into the door itself. Different variations include a scraping sound on the car door. Some versions start the same way but have the couple spotting the killer, warning others, and then narrowly escaping with the killer holding onto the car roof. In other versions, the woman sees a shadowy figure watching the couple from nearby. The man leaves to confront the figure, who then suddenly disappears. Thinking that his date has just imagined it, the man returns to the car, only to see that the woman has been brutally murdered with a hook. Another variation has the woman seeing the man's butchered body suspended upside down from a tree with his fingernails scraping against the roof, giving that scraping sound, which is closer to a
Supernatural,
lot of
yeah.
the ones we've seen in films in Supernatural. In another version of this variation, he's hanging right side up and either his blood is dripping on the roof or his feet are scraping against the roof, warned in inches kind of warned not to look behind her. When she does so, she sees the grisly aftermath of the man's murder. So it goes from being quite tame to quite brutal, really, quite
Yeah, nice
quickly.
one.
And I wonder if this is what it means when it says it changes to suit the time, because in the 1950s, getting home and finding a hook on your car would be really creepy now. But you need, as we've got older, as the kind of generations have changed, you need to shock them more. So it's not only good enough to have that hook; it needs to be someone's been murdered.
Yeah, it's not being where the woman was killed in the car when she
Yeah,
came back to the man being killed and suspended upside down with his fingernails scraping against the roof.
definitely. And I think it's an interesting one because urban legends tend to have a reason for the kind of way they've come from. In this one, it said, what did it say? It's a morality archetype, which and you think of the 1950s, it started. I'm thinking of films like Grease, where kids were getting more. It's post-war era. The more freedom, they're going out. Music's a bit more edgy. The rock and roll's coming in, and they go. Maybe they're going to these like. I'm going to use the term make out spots. You know what I mean? And it's kind of a way to warn them that
I
it's,
shouldn't be doing
yeah, so literally you won't get killed by a Hookman, but you could get pregnant. So you know what I
that.
meit's that kind of warning. Yeah, so what's the good way want to start with that one? Any thoughts on Hookman? Believe it or don't believe it?
It's a hard one, isn't it, really? Because I
Hmm.
mean, the ones where they're getting back and hooks are like hanging in the door, like if that actually
Yeah.
happened and people have found hooks hanging in the door and stuff, then
Hmm.
obviously it is a bit more believable. But at the same time, it
Yeah.
is very much probably just a case of scaremongering.
It's very much Michael Myers, isn't it? The idea that someone
Someone's
dangerous has
been watching,
escaped.
yeah.
Yeah, so this is probably where all these films and monsters have come from, really. I mean, you think of, Freddy, maybe? Freddy hasn't got a hook, has he?
No, he's got
Who am
massive,
I thinking of?
he's claw hands in it.
Yeah, we're just Captain Hook.
Scissor hands. Scissor hands.
No, I'm thinking of something. But actually, interestingly enough, the story did actually come from a real life case. So, there's another thought that the
In
story,
Supernatural, wasn't it? The priest, the was it a priest who went nuts and killed loads of prostitutes and stuff?
in Supernatural.
Yeah, well, that's what I say. Like that's where the Hoopman originated from.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's the backstory. Yeah, but in real life, the story originated apparently. There's something called Liver Lane murders in Texas in the 1940s, where young couples were targeted in secluded spots and killed. So that's quite interesting. That maybe it's come from that, and like
Yeah,
it's a cautionary tale to promote abstinence and avoid
maybe it was
promiscuity.
just a warning that some guys going around killing couples who were in cars,
Yeah,
and then it's just sort of took on a life of its own.
yeah, maybe someone who's jealous, who's on his own or something like that, or a religious nut, and he's going after young couples. You
Yeah.
just don't know, do you? Right, my favourite, backseat of the car. So this legend involves a woman who is driving and being followed by a car or truck. The mysterious pursuer flashes his high beams, tailgates her, and sometimes even rams into her vehicle. When she finally makes it home, she realizes that the driver was trying to warn her that there was a man, and he tends to be a murderer or an escaped mental patient, hiding in her back seat. And each time the man set up to attack her, the driver behind had used his high beams to scare the killer, causing him to duck back down. In some versions, the woman stops for gas. This is the one I'm most familiar with. So the woman stops for gas at the gas station, and the attendant asks her to come inside to sort out a problem with her credit card. Inside the station, he asks if she knows that there's a man in the back of her car. So this one, it's the idea that I think the moral behind this story is don't judge a book by its cover,
Hmm.
because it's in it's really the version I think is quite entertaining is in Urban Legend, the
In Urban
film,
Legends, yeah.
which
Oh,
goes in, the guy's like not being funny, but he's quite a creepy guy, isn't
he's
he? And
resident.
he's got a speech impediment, which, but he's actually, so she's thinking, oh God, basically, she goes into he says to her, he spots the guy in the back of the car. So without making a scene, he's like, ma'am, your card's declined, can you come inside? And then when she goes inside, I think he locks the door behind her.
Yeah.
So she's probably really freaking out. And then he's trying to get his words out and he can't. And I think she kind of bursts past him, drives back in the car, and actually all along he was trying to save her.
Hmm.
Similar to this mysterious truck driver in other versions. So it's the idea that, don't always, I don't know, if someone's trying to help you,
Don't
maybe
judge a book by its cover.
don't judge. Yeah, kind of. So apparently this was a real incident as well, where a killer had hidden the back seat of someone's car, but was luckily caught in time. And some people think that the moral is it's not to assume that the working class strangers there to do you harm. So it's a gas attendant or a truck driver, just because they don't maybe look at the certain way or have like or a certain social standing, that you shouldn't misjudge them, which
Hmm.
is quite an interesting one. Um, 27 Club. What do you know about 27 Club?
Well, it's the one where loads of celebrities die at 27, isn't it? A load of singers and stuff.
Yeah, so a lot of celebrities in the past more so have got to this age 27 and they've died, and it's kind of grown a life of its own, really, that there's something mysterious and magical about this, that they've got to this age. So it's a 27 Club, and that's when they've been kind of offed. It's like a curse. A lot of people think that it's they've sold the soul to the devil to get all of this success and talent, and
Hmm.
then they get to 27, and that's when the devil
Comes to collect,
comes to collect your soul. So the
sends the bloodhounds.
yeah, so the 27 Club is a list consisting mostly of popular musicians,
Hellhounds. Oh, I've made a horrible mistake there, haven't I?
bloodhounds.
I said bloodhounds, hellhounds. Oh my.
It'd be a bit less threatening, wouldn't it?
It would.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. Do you want a treat? The 27 Club is a list consisting mostly of popular musicians, artists, actors, and other celebrities who died at the age of 27. Although the claim of a statistical, you know what, I'm not going to delete that, I'll just try it again. A spike in statistics for the death of musicians at that age has been refuted by scientific research. It remains a cultural phenomenon, documenting the deaths of celebrities, many noted for their high risk lifestyles. So, what that's saying basically is they've done research into this, and actually, there's not much of a spike in 27. There's lots of 28, 30, 23. I suppose, 27s in your 20s, maybe you are a bit more reckless. And by the time, if these rock stars who live these hedonistic lifestyles manage to get over 30, then the chances of them continuing that maybe lessen a bit, to settle down.
Yeah,
I mean, I love this legend because you know me, I'm a massive music geek and I love my music. So you've got the likes of Robert Johnson, Brian Jones from the Rolling Stones, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, my favourite Kurt Cobain, and I love Amy Winehouse as well. So
we watched a thing, didn't we,
we,
about this though, where it
mhm.
turns out that there's actually more at 28
Yeah,
and
uh-huh.
26, but it's the bigger
It's the
names
bigger
are at
names.
27.
That's it. Yeah, there's like, and the big one that can start it is Robert Johnson. I'm not
Mm.
going to go too much into Robert Johnson because if you're a Supernatural fan, you know that there's an excellent episode on him and Matty's Bloodhouse. So we'll keep that for a later date. But yeah, so Robert Johnson was a blues musician. Little bit of background. He wasn't the best musician, then he went off for a period and he came back and he was just this amazing player, almost to the point where he actually used to turn his back to the audience so people couldn't see him playing. And some
Mhm.
people say that was just because he didn't want people to copy his style, but actually people say he had an extra hand, the devil's hand he used to play. And if you listen to some of the vinyl and LPs and things, it's it's like it's been layered and it's actually just one person playing,
Mhm.
which even musicians nowadays would think, "Oh, how did they create that?" And I could be wrong, but I think he was a big inspiration to the likes of the Rolling Stones, who were really into his music. And Brian Jones, Rolling Stones, Janis Joplin, these people were really heavily into the 60s, 70s psychedelic drugs, and they lived a very fast and dangerous lifestyle. And unfortunately, they didn't make it past 27. But it is interesting. I mean, most of these were presumed accidental overdoses, but you've got Kurt Cobain who did sadly take his own life, but you could argue that's because he had too many kind of experiences with drugs and that kind of thing. Um, so what's thoughts on 27 before we move on?
I think it's, like I say, it's already been, there's loads of research, isn't there? There's more at
Yeah,
28, 26 and stuff. So I think it's just because, like I say, the names
yeah. I think
ring
I
out
had to put
even
it in
more,
there.
don't they? Yeah, have to go in there because it is a
It is
good one. It is a good
interesting.
one,
I
but
love that.
I think
Yeah,
when you actually start looking into it, it's probably,
yeah.
it's just a coincidence, isn't
But because I'm so much into my music, when I remember when I turned like when I was 27, I don't know who I thought I was. I was like, yes, I've made it to 20.
it? My word.
Yeah, I know. Okay, next, the spider bite. So, a young girl is asleep while a spider crawls across her face and rests on her cheek for a few moments. The next morning, she asks her mother about the red spot on her cheek, and the mother responds, "It just looks like a spider bite. It'll go away, just don't scratch it." As time passes, the spot grows into a small boil. She confronts her mother again and complains that it's getting larger and that it's sore. The mother replies, "That happens sometimes. It's coming to a head." More days pass and the girl complains that it hurts and is really unsightly. Finally concerned that it might be infected, the mother agrees to take her to a doctor, but he's not available until the next day. In order to soothe herself that evening, the girl takes a bath. As she soaks, the boil bursts and releases a swarm of baby spiders into the water from the eggs that the mother spider had laid in her face.
Let's clean that one, right?
Horrifying.
That's what
My kryptonite is spiders, so
it
it's interesting this one because there's lots of different versions. My dad used to another one of Amy's bedtime stories. My dad used to tell me this story, but it was totally different. It was the what? So basically, there's a guy who goes to work in a kind of hot climate country, and he's working in the fields doing some kind of manual job, farming or something like that. And he goes to sleep because the sun's so hot. He takes a nap in the fields, and when he wakes up the next few days, he's got a really bad pounding headache and doesn't know what to do. And eventually, the headache he dies. And when they perform an autopsy, when they open his head, all these spiders crawl out. And so apparently, when he was asleep, this massive spider crawled in his ear and laid eggs in his brain.
Oh, no.
But I didn't know that was an urban legend at the time. I just thought that must have been something that was on the news. Like, so that's
I'm sure this has actually happened though, like with the
oh,
spider bite, because
probably.
I'm sure there's pictures on the internet where like
Has it
somebody's
though?
had like a spider, and maybe not this like eggs, but somebody's
Yeah.
had an actual spider inside of like their arm or something.
Oh, I mean, it happens. Like they get fish and the, that can jump up you.
Oh yeah,
It's too graphic.
yeah, grim.
Well, if a spider, of course, would crawl in your ear or your nose or something, but would it be able to survive and lay eggs? I
That's the
don't know
thing,
the
isn't it?
science on that one. If
No,
you do, let me know. But that is a terrifying one.
gee, horrendous. I don't want to believe it. That's
I
true.
don't want to, yeah, me neither. Right, we're going to go to one that really interests me. It's a bit more of a kind of meaty one, this one. So, urban legend, you could argue it's actually a conspiracy theory. I'd get one in there. The moon landing. Thoughts?
Oh, I don't know. I would just say it happened.
You know what? I remember when I was at work once, in one of my old jobs, and someone was discussing this, and they were saying there's morons out there who think it didn't happen. I mean, I'm not saying I don't think it happened, but there's part of me that just doesn't believe anything the government kind of puts out there. And I was thinking, there's a lot of things to suggest that actually maybe this didn't happen.
It's it's a hard one though, because obviously the US did want to try and beat the Russians
Well, the
to it.
space race was massive, the
Aye, but like
Soviets, yeah.
at the same time, like yeah, there's loads of stuff out there to say that it didn't happen, but a lot of people just sort of twist what they want to twist
Oh, of
to make it
course.
sound more like it didn't happen. But then I mean, it's the same way going the other side of things where people will twist to sort of be like, well, you can clearly tell that it did happen because.
True. So the moon landing, many people believe that the Apollo 11 moon landings of 1969 were a hoax set up by the US government to convince people that America had the technology to reach the moon and to continue the race to the moon against the Russians. That Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and fellow astronauts were in fact actors who have kept up the act to this very day. It links closely to another urban legend of Area 51. Some people believe that this top security location houses the moon landing set rather than aliens, and that the actual moon landing footage was shot by none other than Stanley Kubrick, who directed The Shining in 2001 A Space Odyssey. Take a breath. I've got my words crossed up already. There was a man who actually worked for NASA and he'd been involved with the work to put a man on the moon. He left shortly before Apollo 11 launched and claimed that scientists had been years away from reaching their goal and that technology wasn't there yet. So, how could this be? So, this guy worked for them and he left just a little bit before the Apollo 11 took off. And he was saying, well, before I left, we were absolutely nowhere close to reaching this destination. So,
If it is real though, why would they keep it aside? Why wouldn't they just take all the stuff down?
that's a really good point. Why would they keep
Why would they
evidence?
take the risk in case
Yeah,
somebody somehow, like,
broke
not that I
into.
ever think it could happen,
Yeah,
but got into Area 51 and found it when they
I
could just
haven't got an
literally take
answer
it
for that
down?
one because that is a really, I never thought of that. Why would they keep it as a kind of,
Yeah, I'm like, why are they keeping it up? Like, I'm sorry, like the amount of money and that they have. I mean,
yeah,
not just that, like, it's not like they're keeping it up so that they can be like, oh, just in case we need to shoot any new footage, because like,
because
why
it,
would
would- it would
any
that
new
wouldn't fly
footage come out?
nowadays,
Yeah,
would it?
exactly.
The
No new
technology
footage is
and
going to come
stuff.
out of it.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting though because like Stanley Kubrick, who did this 2001: A Space Odyssey. I think the reason they've pegged him as the director is because that film was quite ahead of its time and it was obviously all space related. So
Hmm.
I don't know.
Someone would have let it slip by now as well.
The fact that Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and the other astronauts are still to this day going around perpetuating this lie is quite far-fetched, maybe. But unless you've been threatened or paid a lot. But I do like that. I do like the idea that because urban legend of Area 51, they tend to link that with Roswell a lot, don't they? With these supposed aliens and alien craft.
Hmm.
Well, actually, it might just be the set of Area 51. Sorry, of the moon landing.
Like I say, I don't think that would be the case. They could just take
Yeah,
it down.
I just think it's interesting. So there's a few theories why people think this was a hoax. So we're going to go through them and you can just react and say what you think. Old Glory, the American flag. So the American flag that the astronauts planted on the moon, which should have been flaccid, the moon existing in a vacuum, is taut in photos and even waved at some points. So it's something like there's no wind on the moon, so how come this flag's waving? What do you think?
I'm sure that has been debunked though. Like I'm sure there is a reason. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I'm sure there is actually a reason for why it waves.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm sure there was like a watch documentary and someone was explaining why it would have happened.
Yeah, well, funny enough, I have got the kind of counter arguments. So apparently, the Americans didn't want a flaccid flag. Um, doesn't really inspire anyone, does it? It's just it just standing there.
Correct.
So it was no way to declare victory in that typical kind of cinematic way. So what they did was engineers fitted a pole with a crossbeam on which to hang the flag. If it looks like it's waving, that's because Buzz Aldrin was twisting the pole, screwing it into the lunar soil. So that's their reason.
Hmm.
But other people say, well, that's a load of rubbish. It's actually waving on its own when he's not even touching it.
Even if he's turning it around by the pole, like they say, like it would.
So even
Like,
if he hasn't touched it, he's still got the momentum of him. Is that what you mean? It still could move on its own because he'd literally just screwed it in.
yeah, I
Yeah.
thought they were, didn't you say there it was like as he was screwing the flag in?
Yeah, all I'm saying is, isn't on the moon landing footage, isn't it moving when no one's touching it? I could be wrong there. I'm not sure. We'll move on to number two because I haven't got my facts on that one. There's only one source of light on the moon, the sun, yet the shadows of the astronauts fall every which way, suggesting multiple light sources, just the sort of light sources you might find in a movie studio.
Um, I mean, we've got a pint. Like, I don't know why there would be multiple shadows, but
That's a biggie. That's what people say. The sun would only cast one reflection, but the shadows of the astronauts and the equipment were in every which way. And people were saying it's because there's big, heavy duty studio lights.
surely they wouldn't be stupid enough to leave all them on, though.
I mean, you probably wouldn't, would you think
The
that
best
far
kept
ahead?
secret. This would possibly be the best kept secret ever. They would get stuff like that right.
But argument with that, when you're showing this to a 1960s audience on TV, you don't kind of factor in the fact that 30 years later, astute people are going to have, they're going to have technology to really rewind things. They just think it's a one-off thing. They wouldn't have had the foresight to think there's going to be conspiracy theorists in the future who can actually get it up on a computer screen and rewind it and zoom in. They can't see the future. They just think it's going to be a one-off thing. So they probably wouldn't have thought of that.
I don't know what you got the counter argument for
I've got the counter argument.
this.
Apparently, they say that there were multiple sources of light. Of course, the sun, but actually, it came from Earth as well, and the lander itself. But also, there was lights on the spacesuits of the astronauts, which I don't really understand because surely that's just a reflect. Maybe it's reflecting, reflective,
Well, they
maybe
might have had actual lights on the suits so that they could see in the dark.
like torches.
Aye.
Oh, of course, yeah. Oh, well, we'll let them off.
Debunked.
The blast circle. If NASA had actually landed a craft on the moon, it would have left an impression and markings where the jets fired during takeoff. Yet, as can be seen in NASA's own photos, there are none. You know what would have left no impression? A movie prop. Conspiracy theorists point that what looks like a C written on one of the moon rocks as it came from the special effects department. So they think that there's actually special effects that have been labelled.
But again, like, surely they wouldn't leave a C on it.
Yeah, and what does
I
C even
mean,
stand for?
exactly, like,
Conspiracy.
why would, I mean, is there actually a C? Have you seen these pictures?
Have I? Yeah, there's some where it leaves like sorry, it doesn't. It should have left a big kind of crater in the
No, there's a
moon.
C on the rock.
I'll be honest, I haven't seen that, but it's they what they've done is they've really zoomed in, and I'll Google it after this. It'll probably be a case of it's actually a carving, a natural carving
Hmm.
that they think looks like a C. I don't think it'll be a C in Sharpie. It's be
Yeah.
like a G
Someone's actually
thing.
drawn a C on.
So yeah, but the counter argument to this one is the moon has about one-fifth of gravity of what Earth has, and the landings were therefore softer than they would have been here. The lander drifted down like a leaf, nor was much propulsion needed to send the lander back into orbit, so it left no impression, just as you leave no impression when you touch the bottom of a swimming pool. What looks like a sea is probably a shadow. That's what they say,
Hmm.
which actually makes sense. So, there's not much left as evidence because it's a lot less gravity and a lot less kind of damaged when the came down heavy. It's a softer landing
Yeah, it would be
essentially.
softer landing, yeah. The gravity.
Right, we'll pick it up a little bit. We've got two other things that the conspiracy theorists say. Number four, here you are supposedly in outer space, yet we see no stars in the pictures. You know, you know where else where you wouldn't see stars? A movie set.
Oh, really grasped that. They've really grasped that straws, haven't they? I don't know what the counter argument for this one.
The moonwalks were made during the lunar morning. Columbus went ashore in day. Columbus is the name of the craft. Columbus went ashore in daylight too. You don't see stars when the sun is out, nor at night in a light-filled place like a stadium or a landing zone. So because there was lots of different light sources, you don't see the stars,
Mm.
like light pollution maybe. That's what they say.
The argument on the other side of not seeing stars is probably better out of these two. But again, like, this is just what I said. Like, you're going to have arguments off both sides on here, and they're going to
Yeah.
try and use stuff to explain whichever side they think's right.
And the last one, which I think is quite interesting, a giant leap for mankind. If Neil Armstrong was the first man on the moon, then who was filming him coming down the ladder?
So never like a little like a robot or something at the center of
Yeah, they say that there was a camera mounted on the side of the lunar module. Or it could have been Stanley Kubrick.
could be aliens.
God, it's
It's
aliens. Yeah,
aliens.
so we've cracked it.
Uh, we met some aliens up there.
Yeah,
They're like, "I'll take a picture for you if you want."
yeah. Come on,
And
Neil,
that's what
give it
happened.
more
Yeah.
emotion.
Yeah. Come on, work with us, Neil.
Yeah, make us believe it.
Uh,
And the last one that I've just thought of there as well. I know we'll get off this topic now because we could go down a giant rabbit hole with this. Why did they never go back to the moon? I mean, I think they did, but why? If it was such a, why did they never keep going back? And
Well, it was a very risky thing, wasn't it? When they
a
first did
lot of
it,
money,
maybe they
yeah.
were all like waiting for it to be a bit more finalized.
Yeah, I just feel like a lot of conspiracy theorists, and I get when they say, well, why would you not keep going back and doing more research or staying longer, or if it was real? So we're going to move on. So before we do, then, hands up, or hands, thumb up, or thumb down. Did the moon landing happen?
I think it happened.
Yeah, we'll go with that. I'm not convinced. No, no. Yeah, I'll be sensible. It did happen, but I do think it's a really interesting conspiracy theory.
Uh,
Okay, so we've got a story this time. So I've just adapted a popular legend and with like a story form. So hopefully you'll enjoy this one. It's called The Babysitter and the Clown Statue. Laurie was babysitting for some family friends one night, a little boy and a little girl. She'd babysat for the family a few times over the years and had never noticed a particularly grotesque clown statue that stood in the corner of the living room in front of an overflowing bookcase. It must be new, Laurie thought. Though why they would ruin the tasteful decor in their home with such an ugly addition was beyond her. The statue had to be at least 6 foot tall, with garish colours and sinister, piercing eyes. The babysitter started to feel more and more uneasy about this statue throughout the night. She felt as though the eyes were following her whenever she moved around the room with the children. Once the children were tired from playing and were fast asleep in bed, she headed to the kitchen and grabbed herself a soda. The fridge was fully stocked with goodies. They had great taste in candy, if not ornaments, she mused. Laurie settled down in the living room and turned on the TV. A cheesy slasher movie was on, and the sudden flash on the screen illuminated the loathsome face of the clown, who she could see constantly from the corner of her eye. She decided to call the parents who were out with friends at a fancy restaurant in the centre of town. I'm so sorry to bother you, she said, but I was wondering if I could move this clown statue or put a sheet over it. It's starting to scare the kids and I. She lied, not wanting them to think that she was erratic and easily frightened. The mother hesitated, and Laurie thought the line had gone dead for a moment, until she said in a quiet but serious tone, Laurie, take the kids and get out of the house now. The neighbour across the street will let you in. Call me immediately when you get there. And with that, the mother hung up. Frightened and confused, the babysitter grabbed the half asleep children from their beds and ran out. When she and the kids arrived safely at the neighbour's, she called and the mother answered. What's wrong? Did something happen? Are you all okay? The girl asked. Yes, we are fine, but it's not us we're worried about. It's you and the kids. Laurie, we don't have a clown statue. And the mother hung up. The police arrived and found the statue in question, a man who'd escaped from an asylum not long before and had stolen a clown costume. The parents were perplexed as to how he had managed to break into their home posing as a statue. He was arrested and returned to the facility. Luckily, the children were oblivious to the terrifying incident, or so they had all thought. A few weeks later, the youngest child had asked her parents, Where did the talking clown go? He was funny.
it's creepy, like.
Good, isn't it? I love that
Yeah,
story.
yeah. Imagine.
Yeah, it's just terrifying that one. The thought of just.
To be fair, if there was a creepy clown statue in the corner, it wouldn't have took me in the entire night to give him a ring. I'd have been really like, is this like, what's up with that?
Has he not been in the toilet? Or
Ah,
maybe
you
he's got
know,
like nappies on or something.
just standing there peeing himself.
Oh, it's a water feature. But yeah, there's also, you probably heard of this one, a different one, which is what's that film called? a film from the early 2000s where it's the babysitter when a
Is it
stranger
called The
calls.
Babysitter or something
No,
like
it's
that?
when a stranger calls. I could be wrong there, but
Isn't it the
it's
one where like the ring, which is like
she's
upstairs or
babysitting
something?
in this really fancy house. And I remember the house is very new age, modern with all glass and like aquariums and stuff. And it's actually she keeps getting phone calls, and then it's it's something like the phone calls are coming from in the house. It's that
Ah,
kind of creepy
yeah.
thing. But so there's lots like, again, there's lots of different variations to this one. Um, yeah, so it's one of them ones. I suppose if you're terrified of clowns, that would be a pretty horrific one as well.
Uh, I like that one to be fair.
I do, I
It's a
do
good
like that
good
one.
story that one,
It's a
isn't
bit
it?
of
But it's
it's like
quite
a
creepy.
campfire tale, isn't it?
Imagine.
Yeah. I mean, you would never have a huge statue like that, would you?
I know.
Oh, well, I wouldn't
Like the
know.
fact that she thought that they would have that in the corner of the room, it's on her a bit, really.
And are you scared of clowns?
No,
No, I'm not. I don't really get the whole.
no.
You know what else I don't understand when people go on about dolls? I don't understand the fear.
Dolls are pretty creepy. I got no fear for them, but they are pretty creepy. I understand why people would
See, when
think
I
they're
was
weird.
younger, I had shelves in my room with all these China
Because you're
dolls.
creepy.
Guilty. No, no, I used to love China dolls. I used to love dolls. They don't creep me out at all. I
Oh
haven't
no, they
what.
are quite strange. Like on the episode of
No,
Supernatural where they're in the house
Doll's
with all
House. Oh,
them
see, I
dolls.
love Doll's House and things like that. So we're going to finish off on a bit more of a true crime one, but it did eventually evolve into a really common urban legend. So have you heard of the razor blade in the candy bar or the poison candy?
Aye,
Usually tends to be on Halloween where people say, look, don't accept. Well, the moral of that tale is don't accept things from strangers because it's evolved from America, I think, where there could be in the candy bar there would be a razor blade when you
stuck
bite
in the
into
front.
it,
Yeah,
or an apple, sorry. So you'd bite into it and it would cut your mouth, or there's poison candy and
it's
stuff.
no fault of having apples on Halloween. Like,
I mean, yeah, imagine giving out apples on
imagine doing
Halloween.
that
God, in
horrible.
our street, if we did that, we'd get egged off.
Ah, yeah, aye.
What do Americans say? TP'd. Is that right? TP'd?
Something like
They
that.
do with the toilet roll. So, of all the urban legends about poison-laced candy, one is actually true. And 41 years later, the true story of Houston's Candyman murder still feels very real for residents who remember the shocking crime. I'm just going to preface this one that actually it's really horrifying and sad. So, no offense caused because it does involve children and I hate stuff like that. But I wanted to put it in there because it is where this legend came from. So on Halloween night in 1974, Ronald O'Brien, a father from suburban Deer Park who had volunteered to take his son and friends trick-or-treating in nearby Pasadena, fatally poisoned his 8-year-old son, Timothy, with a pixie stick laced with cyanide. I mean, that is just horrific.
Aye,
At trial, it was found that O'Brien had opened the sticks. So you know what kind of ones I'm talking about, them old fashioned kind of like they've got
yeah, the little white
sugar in.
ones.
Yeah, you bite it off and
Hmm.
he'd opened the sticks, added the cyanide and stapled it back shut. Four other friends were also given the poisoned sticks, which O'Brien claimed had been given to the boys whilst trick-or-treating at a darkened home. None of the other boys ingested the candy, though one was found asleep that night with the candy in his hand. He'd been unable to remove the staple. Imagine as a
Ah,
parent.
yeah. Aye. You'd be
And
so thankful for the look, wouldn't you?
it's just horrific the fact that he's done this, but to make it less kind of centered on him, he's actually done it to his friends to make it
Aye.
less like because obviously he didn't want to kill the friend, he wanted to kill his own son, which we
Trying to get
find
away
out
with it, wasn't
was for insurance reasons. But I mean, how horrific, how it's
he?
awful.
Ah,
Just
scum.
but the fact that none of the boys died, but in one was even going to eat it, but he couldn't get I mean, that's luck. That's
Hmm.
someone looking out for you. That I think. Prosecutors said that O'Brien pushed his son into eating the candy. Absolute disgraceful person, trying not to swear there, before going to bed on Halloween night. After complaining of the bitter taste, the boy went to bed, but moments later began vomiting. By the time he was taken to hospital, Timothy had sadly died. And the guy who did it, O'Brien, he had taken a large insurance policy out on his son earlier that year, and he became known as the Candy Man or the man who killed Halloween. There's not really much to say about that one, is there? It's just an interesting where it's actually come from, and then this evolved over time as parents being like quite rightly terrified about trick or treating because who knows what weirdos are.
Out there, yeah.
Yeah, but you know what's even more sinister with this one is you presume it's been some weirdo who's given it to random kids. It's actually a lot closer to home.
Hmm.
So we'll finish there. How much do you believe in urban legends? Were there any that I've read today that you think have got more credit, believability over the others?
Well, that one's probably,
Well, yeah. Uh-huh.
well, it's true. Maybe not for all the other ones that come out of it, like.
I just wanted to put that one in
Um,
there because I think we needed a one that was kind of true, because a lot of them are just kind of hearsay, aren't they?
Yeah, I think that a few of them have like the elements that are probably like believable, but the vast majority of them are probably just cases of them trying to drive up like scare for certain things.
Yeah, it's a really important part of our pop culture and society, really, though, these urban legends, and they do sometimes carry important, you could say, morals to them or warnings, but they're there to entertain and scare, aren't they? And some
Hmm.
of some of them actually are quite sinister. So thanks so much for listening to this episode of Ghost Creatures and Scares Oh My.
Please make sure to leave us a review and let us know what you thought of today's episode. Feedback will really help us out, and we really want to know your thoughts to help us hone our podcast.
We're on Instagram and Ghost Creatures and Scares Oh My. I have set up a Facebook group as well. You can also email us at ghostcreaturesandscares@gmail.com if you've got any thoughts or any stories that you'd like us to read out loud on the podcast. So thank you so much again. We're going to be back next week to explore the history of haunted burial sites and the ghosts attached to them. Just to preface that, we've got the Paris catacombs, we've got Edinburgh catacombs, and haunted plague burial sites, which is going to be a really good one. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Have a great week.